But to many people, security keys are synonymous with YubiKeys. And to that end, I'm very happy to bring on stage Chris Harrell, Yubico's CTO, to talk to you this afternoon. Chris.
All right. Find the right. This one has notes. Great. So hi, I'm Christopher. And I'm not actually here to talk to you about security keys. I'm here to talk to you about sort of the origin of FIDO and things you may not hear about quite as often in the world of what we're impacting. So I've been doing information security adjacent stuff since the mid-90s. I've worked at big companies and small companies. I've worked in a situation where I've had to protect a very sensitive few number of users to a truly colossal number, including with Mr. Lord over there in the past. And I've been at Yubico since about 2016. It turns out the things I like doing are solving meaningful problems, learning new things, and helping people. And it turns out that Yubico is a great place to do all three of those things. But today, I want to sort of turn it to the things that we don't see that often. So enterprises, banks, government, high assurance use cases, all those sorts of things. They have the incentives, they have the staff, they have the budget to adopt, operate, and maintain cutting-edge technology like smart cards and the like. So smart cards have been around a long time. They are high security, but we heard about Mr. Letty's experience before of not wanting to get locked into a vendor. Smart cards were historically proprietary. They required client-side software, specialized issuance services. They really were only useful inside of one organization unless you had some kind of crazy federation thing going on. And they weren't very friendly for the web or for users. So the final problem, I think, with smart cards is that because of all those limitations, the motivation to do something like that only came after a fairly significant security event. And it turns out that the catalyst for the creation of FIDO U2F and later evolving into FIDO2/WebAuthn was such a security event. So let's talk a moment about that. If it'll go. There we go. So in 2009, there was an attack called the Aurora attacks, and it was an attack by Chinese state-aligned actors against many, many companies. You can read about it on Wikipedia. There's a bunch of stuff that hasn't really made it public, but one of the people that did make public some of the information about the attack on them was Google. And the thing that they said was most notable about this attack was that the target of the attack was information about accounts related to supporters of human rights in China throughout the world. So not only did the attackers attack Google trying to get information about these accounts, they logged directly into the accounts because of weaknesses in password and MFA solutions that were available at the time. And we've seen similar techniques to those used around the world in times like the Arab Spring and since then. So this attack really incensed Sergey, one of Google's founders, and the result, due to his security team and his history, was that Google really scaled up the set of improvements and team size for Google security. And there was recently a set of videos that was released, I think within the last month, called Hacking Google. If you haven't seen them, please watch them. It gives interviews with people who were behind the scenes working on this stuff, and it gives a perspective on the story that really didn't get shared widely beforehand. Now, I was elsewhere working on this exact same problem around the same time, and I was not with Yubico at the time, but Yubico was a Google vendor, and we made security keys that did OTP and a few other things for them. And Google, around 2011, the Aurora attacks happened in 2009. There was a lot of infrastructural improvements and the like that happened in 2010. And then the conversations really started in earnest around 2011 about, hey, can we get all of our vendors in here? Can we make some smart cards that give us certificates that allow us to protect our corporate environment and protect our production environment? So the vendors all said, yes, of course, we can do that. We've done that for other vendors. And one of Yubico's founders, Jacob, said, hey, this smart card security stuff is good, but maybe we could make it for everyone and not just for Google. Like we could make an unlimited number of public keys. They could have the properties of phishing resistance. It could scale to the web. We could respect privacy. We could not require this client-side software. We could have a great user experience. And initially there was some skepticism, but it turns out that a wonderful man from NXP kind of spoke up in the room and said, hey, like I think he's onto something, and we had the discussions. And around sort of, I think 2012 or so, we had made the commitment, we had shipped the first protocol, mostly developed with Yubico and Google, and later moved that to the FIDO Alliance, which evolved into FIDO U2F, FIDO2, WebAuthn. So Yubico's core mission from the very beginning was when Stina, our founder, who is not technical, saw people were getting attacked using the security that was available in Swedish banks at the time. And her husband, Jacob, was the guy I was just talking about, worked in some nuclear facilities, and they did have smart cards. And she said, well, why can't everybody have these things? Why can't everybody be protected? And he's like, complicated software, blah, blah, blah. And she said, like, well, I've got a keyboard, and when I plug in a new keyboard, it doesn't require any software. He says, I think you're onto something. So from the very beginning, Yubico was about bringing better security to everyone. So this mission of making the internet safer for all is something that's core to who we are. And so we've been very lucky that Yubico has, from the very beginning, done a lot of quiet pro bono work, helping people across the world increase their security against some pretty advanced attackers. Some of them have shared that information. We don't typically like to brag about it because we don't do it for that. We do it because it's the right thing to do. However, we've now kind of formalized it into a bit of a program called Secure It Forward, so people know that it exists, that know how to contact us. And we've helped a lot of people who are in need, people who are fighting for democracy, for free speech, for human rights around the world in 20 different countries. So we hope that that's helping people. And we've got a few stories from people that we have worked with that we are allowed to share, and a few groups that we're very, very proud to support. And then after those stories, I'm going to talk a little about how this group and how standards bodies in general have helped a great deal, and how appreciative we are to all of our colleagues who are making this stuff happen. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Defending Digital Campaigns group. Yubico's been working with various election campaigns individually as much as we could, given the laws in the past, but those laws changed and allow us to help in a bigger way. And then we have much more organization around the digital campaigns now with this group. We have funded tens of thousands of keys for federal elections since our relationship with this group began in 2020. And DDC says that security keys are the #1 product that they make available to their campaigns that people seek out and accept and actually use. And the reason that they like those things is that it protects them across multiple services, so the standards that Bill was talking about. It works on many applications, and it works on personal accounts, it works on different devices, it works everywhere they want it to work, and that's because of the work of people in this room. So they also like the form factors that we as a company offer, but I'm not here to toot our own horn. I just want to say thank you to Defending Digital Campaigns and to make sure that their message gets out there and that we're very proud to work with them. So democracy is important to Yubico. Likewise, we think that infrastructure that helps people live and support themselves is extremely important. So most recently, there's been an invasion of Ukraine. Unless you're living under a rock, hopefully you know that. This attack is a little different from armed conflict in the past in that the digital realm is huge. It's certainly not as important as the physical realm, but it's, I think according to some accounts, they saw increases in the 3,000 to 4,000% in terms of attacks on the cyber infrastructure of Ukraine. And so Yubico had some partners, also members of the Fight Alliance, former employee of the Fight Alliance, who was from Ukraine, and we got connected with a company called Heidi's that had people on the ground in Ukraine. Yuri used to work for FIDO here, and he's been a great ally as well. So far, we have donated 20,000 keys to support many different government agencies in Ukraine. If you can scroll my copious speaker notes so I can see the rest of them. We've got the SSSCIP, which is the State Service for Special Communication and Information Protection of Ukraine. We have the Ministry of Digital Transformation, who's responsible for helping many organizations throughout the Ukraine government transform their IT and modernize it and make it secure. We have the government-owned gas and power companies. And we also have the top-level, the GTLD.UA managing organization that have deployed YubiKeys in some capacity or another. We're still, in a war-torn country, it's difficult to get keys there. It's difficult to get confirmation that they're being used and not resold and the like, so we're being very careful, but we are also supporting them as much as we possibly can. I won't share the specific story because it's a little embarrassing, honestly, but we have been thanked in ways that are extremely humbling by the people who are operating this infrastructure, and we believe, based on those thanks and the stories that we've heard, that it's making a real difference in the world. So we do hope that war ends soon with as little bloodshed as possible, but in the interim, we hope that we can help protect infrastructure from cyber attacks where you don't have to have quite as much skin in the game in order to have an outsized effect on a population. So human rights. Turns out that there's lots of organizations that do this stuff. We're only connected with a few of them so far, but that number is growing. We've also had our colleagues at Google and at other places refer people to us for help, and individuals that work at those organizations work with us. But we have former relationships with Freedom of the Press, Redes Ayuda, Access Now, Free Press Unlimited, Internews, quite a few of them. But I want to share a story today from Freedom of the Press. We've been working with them for a long time, and their job is to protect, defend, empower public interest journalism in the 21st century. So we've given many hundreds of YubiKeys to the Freedom of the Press Foundation, and an interesting area of focus for them is that they conduct extensive security training for the journalists that are covering world events both in the US and abroad. And in that security training, they talk a lot about general account security and practices and how you organize things, et cetera, but they heavily emphasize the importance of strong authentication. So they bring in YubiKeys to protect people. They help set them up in real time, because I think as some of you know who have tried to do this stuff before, when you give away stuff, people don't understand the value of it. Sometimes it sits in a drawer. So they actually walk the journalists through setting it up and making sure their accounts are protected from the time that they leave that room. We have human rights and civil rights organizations. Those organizations are places like the Anti-Defamation League, Human Rights Foundation, Legal Aid Society, and Operation Safe Escape. Today I want to talk a little about what we've heard from Operation Safe Escape, and this one really kind of gives me chills when I think about it, because I've known people in situations like this, and I've seen the risk that technology can pose when your life is in danger from some people that you perhaps formerly trusted or have to be in close proximity with. So Operation Safe Escape gives keys to high-risk survivors to protect their online accounts. And from their accounts, they say this has caused life-saving intervention. And what they mean by that is that access to people's online accounts when you're in danger can expose your physical location from either GYP type stuff or from actual GPS logs and history. They can expose sensitive information about employment, and particularly about people's support system. Like if you've got friends that are actually supporting you to get away from a bad situation, then you can be locked out, unable to access those people, have rumors spread about you, those sorts of things. So that kind of protection is more than just information security protection, though. It's a peace of mind protection. So even if those accounts never get attacked, the fact that you have set up world-class security on an account gives people the peace of mind that helps them start to move on from the trauma that they've experienced. And so that was a very humbling moment for me. So we're definitely protecting information, we're protecting people's accounts, but we're helping them move past their trauma or get better in a sense, like find a better way, get out, I think is the word, right? So extremely humbling there. They also use keys and WebAuthn to protect the accounts that their volunteers and staff use to engage with people so that their systems don't become a point of compromise for the people they're assisting. And in the future, they're spinning up something new that I've been authorized to talk about today. They're spinning up a threat hunting capability to target and disrupt non-consensual pornography and child abuse sexual material, and the networks that spread them. So they're working with law enforcement, if you don't mind scrolling just a little bit again, sorry. And they're going to be launching that capability this month. Very exciting news. The agents that are involved in this will be using YubiKeys to protect the secure systems that they're using to track these awful, awful actors. So again, thanks. We're very, very happy to have played a small part in supporting getting these people the help they need. So to close, and I actually am running early too, but I'll talk about this for a moment. Without the people who've worked on FIDO and the technical working groups and privacy and security, without the people who've worked on WebAuthn, without the engineers that initially did this at Google and at Yubico, I don't think this solution would have had quite the same impact that it's having today. And what I mean by that is the people who are involved really, really care about doing the right thing. We all work for companies, like we talked about earlier, the well-resourced companies are the ones that sort of founded, or are able to fund a lot of this stuff. But despite the fact that we all need to get a paycheck and our companies may have other motives, the people involved pushed very hard and continue to push very hard and have for years to do the right thing. And what that means is that when we're in working groups, we come up with user stories that we hope embody the kinds of threats that people see in their day-to-day lives. And we by no means are experts in our privileged lives about what's going on in all parts of the world, but we try and take the pieces of news and we talk to the people that are working directly with those who are at risk, and we come up with user stories. And those user stories are things like, what happens at a border crossing? What happens if some of the relying parties that I've got a key or a device registered to are colluding with one another and trying to unmask the identity of someone? And we talk about things like, what if I have an account on unpopularreligion.org, or illegal sexuality like Social, or regime activity tracking, NGO? How do I make sure that those identities are separate and protected? And there are specific technical solutions that have evolved as the result of considering problems like that. Specifically, I'll call out the unlinkability property of the FIDO privacy principles, so that colluding relying parties can't know that people are using the same device or same security key. And then likewise, most recently in FIDO 2, I think in Barcelona is where we first started talking about this in some depth, we were talking about how can we make sure that as we implement resident credentials, which were new with FIDO 2, that it's not possible to know, even then, without the owner of the device's consent, that different accounts for things that may not even be known to the user that are risky are something that user frequents. And so that resulted in the Cred Protect extension, or all the policy bits and the PIN proving before you list credentials. So I'm definitely not here to compare us to the very, very brave people who are out there fighting for human rights, who are out there fighting for democracy in the world. But I just hope that we're helping people, and these stories helped me and humbled me understand that at least in some way we are. So I want to leave a quote that our other founder is very popular of. She says, a quote from Margaret Mead, who's a famous anthropologist, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So with that, to them and to you, keep up the fight, and thank you.